Be in the know with unlimited access to IBJ and Inside Indiana Business. Our in-depth coverage of all things business means you'll always be completely in the know. Subscribe for just $1 a week. Get started now at ibj.com/trial offer.
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
Down the middle, Mendoza's right on the mark for a touchdown. Omar Cooper Jr.
Indiana University football on a roll. Second-year head coach Curt Cignetti has his highly ranked Hoosiers and Bloomington businesses firing on all cylinders.
To see our season ticket sales up 50% this year, which was, again, just massive for us, as we've always tried to really get that base to grow.
We go one-on-one with Indiana University Athletic Director Scott Dolson. He talks football success, what a new head basketball coach brings to the program, and the challenges of navigating through the world of college athletics and NIL on this edition of the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. And I'm pleased to be joined on the podcast this week by a very busy man. He is the Vice President and Director of Intercollegiate Athletics at Indiana University, and that's Scott Dolson. And Scott, thanks for taking the time. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks. How are you, Gary?
I'm great. Let's hop right into it. As I mentioned, you are a busy guy. Lots going on. Certainly the buzz in Bloomington, in Indiana, and really in the world of college football and college athletics is IU football. How would you describe, Scott, the impact of this season's success, at least to this point?
Yeah, it's really hard to quantify because it's so massive, and obviously it started from really the day that Coach Cignetti arrived here, and I could go back a little farther when President Whitten arrived. You know, she and I talked about football, and she realized right away how important football is to the university, to the community, to the state, and so you know there was a kind of a shared commitment there, and certainly the way that Coach Cignetti has just ignited our fan base and all the efforts that we put into football is certainly paying off. But at the same time, Gary, you know, we got a long way to go. So it's sometimes we're so focused on the things we haven't done yet. So it's hard to, at times even, we're enjoying it. We love it, but we're thinking about all the work that we still have to do, honestly.
I'm sure you're not surprised by the success. You hired the guy, you thought he would do the job. Are you surprised at how fast it has happened?
Yes and no. I think I would lose all credibility that if I said, yeah, I really thought that we'd hired Coach Cignetti and we'd be 18-2 in our first 20 games, that, you know, I would definitely lose credibility. But at the same time, you know, there's certainly a confidence in the blueprint. You know, I did think that the plan, again, from the alignment we have from President Whitten to myself to Coach Sig is that we're committed to football and building a consistently strong competitive football program. So I was confident that we're going to be on the right track, but certainly to have the immediate success has been everything we'd hoped for and more.
Beyond the wins and losses, talk about the impact that a successful, very successful in this instance, football program, what it means for IU, ticket sales, merchandise, student recruitment. You can go on down the list, donor enthusiasm, which I'm sure is being impacted as well. Talk about that impact and how these, an undefeated season, at least to this point, how that translates into some of those areas.
Yeah, again, it's been massive. You know, again, going back to last year, and we had 4 sellouts in a row, that just is really unprecedented here at IU, although we've tried and we've had some good years, you know, to really get off to that great of a start. And then to see our season ticket sales up 50% this year, which was, again, just massive for us, as we've always tried to really get that base to grow. And then to be in the sellout situation we're in, and all of our numbers, you know, for the next 4 games, we're going to sell out. But then to see all of our numbers, as you mentioned, our concessions sales are doubled from where they are 2 years ago. You know, overall income just around football is more than doubled. And just looking at that, and then you look at the impact just around the campus. You look at admissions applications, and you look at the community as I see local restaurants and businesses around the community. I know they're feeling sometimes I'll see someone and they'll say, "Hey, thanks for getting football going," because it really does bleed around the whole community. And so it's super exciting, and it's what we'd always hope for. But again, we know that we just have to keep working hard and keep this thing going.
Scott, you made headlines also when you made Curt Cignetti one of the highest paid football coaches in the country. I think third highest paid football coach in college football. Walk us through that decision. What made you confident he was the right guy to get this done? And if you would just walk us through the process, because obviously IU having success, then the big win at Oregon on the road, and then a high-profile job like Penn State opens up, and some other jobs are likely to open up. Or did that trigger things, or had things already maybe been in the works?
Well, we always have said, really, since Coach Sig started Early Success, when I say we, when reporting to the president and talking to her, that, we don't want to be a one-hit wonder, and we want to make certain that, we're committed to building a winning program. And certainly there's a lot that goes into that, but Coach Cignetti is certainly the kind of the linchpin to where we are and where we want to go. She and I talked at length at the end of last season towards the end of last season, we extended him and gave him the new deal. And then this year, we really felt with the undefeated start, all the momentum, certainly other jobs around the country, what was important to us is that he felt our commitment to him and also our commitment to football. And so the process was really pretty easy in terms of, just popping in his office and last week and really just said to him, it was really important that I said to him, I remember saying this specifically, Gary, we don't want you to feel that we take you for granted, that, that it's going so well, that just because you love it here, it's going well. Manette loves it, his wife. And so we wanted to rework his contract to be more in market with where he's leading us. So that was a great conversation, and basically we talked to his agent, and in really a day or two, we had a new deal done, and certainly solidified his commitment here, and he feels our commitment to him and certainly football as well.
Was there something, though, Scott, that really triggered it, the Penn State job opening up to kind of leap into action, if you will, and make this thing happen? Because obviously a bold move, a big commitment. What really triggered you to get the deal done pretty quickly?
Yeah, I think there's no question as jobs open up, like the job that you'd mentioned at Penn State or just around the country, and particularly with all the noise that gets created around there, we felt like, in addition to showing that commitment to Coach Sig and the program, we felt like we didn't want that to be, all that noise to be a distraction to what is really a tremendous season that we're working on. And so by getting ahead of it and acting quickly, really helped refocus everything back to where it should be, which is on our players, on our team, and in the week-to-week preparation with that. And honestly, I think that, I'm not speaking for him, but I think Coach Sig felt a sense of relief as well for us to really take that off the plate, because believe me, all he wants to do is watch film and prepare the team and continue to build for every game.
Does this send a signal, make a statement, if you will, to the rest of the country, to recruits, to others, in terms of IU? IU has long been regarded as a basketball school. Does this make a statement that, well, you may be a football school too?
Yeah, I would think so. I think people maybe started feeling that last year. And so, we hope that people do feel, whether it is just our largest alumni base in the country, our alumni feeling the commitment to football, and certainly recruits, people all around the country understanding that we're committed to football, just like we're committed to basketball. We're committed also to being a very successful department in every facet. But that commitment to football really is important in terms of being able to do the other things around the department and do the things, because as you know, football drives so much here and all of our counterparts that we compete against.
Well, we mentioned basketball. You also made a very high-profile hire. It's somewhat in the shadows now with all this basketball success. But Darian Devries, the new head basketball coach at IU. Talk about your thoughts with Coach Devries in getting ready for that season to start up before too long. A lot of expectations, I'm sure, that he brings to Bloomington. Talk about the hire and what your expectations are for IU basketball.
It's very similar to what, the process in terms of hiring Coach Cignetti, in terms of really laying out a blueprint for what is important to us from a program. We really wanted, a program that is a modern college basketball program, particularly offensively, where college basketball is going, but still has kind of the old school defense, tough, playing hard that really is kind of, I guess, what our basketball program has been known for. And so in hiring Darren, we felt he was a perfect fit from a basketball perspective, but probably more importantly, just as a person, he really has fit in perfectly for us in terms of the authentic nature he has. He's really a no ego, just a farmer, grew up on a farm in Iowa and just came here and wants to just put his head down and go to work and really appreciates the opportunity to be here. So he's fit in every way. And, my expectations for our program are no different than any fans. We want to be consistently competing for Big Ten and championships and above. But at the same time, initially, Gary, I think what's important is we want our fans to be confident in the direction of our program and like the way we play and really create a lot of hope by just seeing how we go about our business.
And it seems like since arriving, he's done a pretty good job of ginning up some fan enthusiasm. I know there was the event on Kirkwood with the players out there in the street and a lot of excitement around that. It sounds as though the excitement, great for football, but it's certainly building for basketball as well.
Yeah, you could definitely feel it. And I think Darren, his personality, again, I would describe him a lot like Coach Sig in terms of very authentic, genuine, kind of what you see is what you get. And I think Darren has really embraced the community, embraced our fans. And I can give you an example. When we were in Puerto Rico for a 3-game little mini foreign tour at the end of the summer, we had a nice group of fans that were there, and just seeing Darren and then therefore our players interact with our fans has really brought people closer to our program. And I think people are super excited about the energy that's around the program right now.
Certainly football and basketball as well really drive athletic departments around the country. And certainly a lot of your focus needs to be in those areas, but your focus is bigger than that. You've got a lot of sports under your umbrella. How do you find enough hours in the day to kind of balance that prospect and your goal, I'm sure, to have each and every one of those programs be winning programs?
Yeah, we have a tremendous staff and great support, and we do, and you really, that's it's really an excellent point and a great question, Gary, because certainly football and now basketball, as we're going to get ramped up, both men's and women's, they take a lot of attention, a lot of headlines, which they should. That's the way it is nationally. They're high profile sports, but at the same time, we've got 650 plus student athletes. We have some unbelievable stories. We've got the #1 diving program in the country. Our swimming and diving program are going to compete for top 5 positions nationally, hopefully compete for national championships. Soccer, I could go down the list. Volleyball is having the best year in the last 25 years. So we do everything we can to make certain that we support them internally. That we're all part of one big team, and certainly connect fans to all those programs as well. So you can feel though the momentum of football has really helped energize really the whole department, to be honest with you.
How would you characterize? We'll get to a break after this, Scott, and after the break, I want to ask you about the changing landscape of intercollegiate athletics and where you see things going. But in terms of your job as athletics director, you've been in the role, I think, for about 6 years now. Prior to that, served for, I think, more than a decade as kind of a deputy director. So you're in it, have been in it for a long time. I've got to believe your job today and the responsibilities with all the different changes we see is different than it was when you kind of first got started.
It really is. I mean, revenue generation, it really has been an issue for a while to try to make certain you can provide the resources for all your programs and student athletes to be successful. But, I talk a lot now, Gary, about balance and balancing the modernization of college athletics and all of that was still the fundamental core of what IU athletics is all about in terms of, our student athletes still go to class, even though it's more of a business now, but we're it's still about academics. It's still about personal growth, all the great things. And I meet with recruits a lot and I talk to the families about that balance because we don't ever want to become transactional. There's just about buying a player and we use you while you're here and then you just move on. It's still the development of young people. But my job has changed tremendously, to your point, because the business side of things has become larger and larger, that we have to compete in that world in order to have the success on the other side.
Much more ahead with IU Athletics Director Scott Dolson when we return. We'll talk about the future of intercollegiate athletics, get Scott's thoughts on that, and much more when the Business and Beyond podcast returns.
At PNC Bank, we're committed to making a difference in the lives of our customers and communities by helping them move forward financially. As a Main Street bank, we try to do right by our customers with every encounter. Our local teams offer personalized financial advice to help guide you in making the best decision. We're proud to be part of your community. PNC Bank. See how we can make a difference for you at pnc.com. Copyright 2022, the PNC Financial Services Group, Inc., all rights reserved.
We build Indiana. The Laborers International Union of North America are men and women building roads and bridges to get Hoosiers where they're going today and a new energy infrastructure that will keep Indiana competitive tomorrow. LIUNA's over 12,000 statewide members also grow local economies, earning good union wages, shopping where they live and work, and paying taxes. We build Indiana for good jobs and stronger communities. The Laborers International Union of North America. We are LIUNA.
And welcome back to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. My guest this week is the Vice President and Director of Intercollegiate Athletics at Indiana University, Scott Dolson, a guy who, again, has been very busy, very much in the spotlight with IU's football success and a couple of big hires for IU football and IU basketball as well. Scott, as you look at the changing face of intercollegiate athletics, you see the signs everywhere. I know you're just back from a few days in Chicago at some Big Ten meetings. How would you gauge the attitude or the vibe, if you will, in the room with other athletic directors and representatives from schools around the Big Ten? What's kind of the buzz or the talk?
I think that everyone's trying to make certain they can compete in this new world we live in, and a big part of that is honestly driving revenue and making certain that you can provide all the resources to compete, while at the same time still not losing the feel of college athletics. And it's a tough needle to thread at times. But I think that's, a common, component is that everybody's really trying to make certain that we can compete in this new world. And for us specifically at IU, I mentioned this earlier, it's just so important to me that particularly our fans do understand that although it's different and we have some student athletes, not all of them, making decent revenue, which we're all for, the revenue share, new opportunity, but they're in class and they still have all the expectations that they have from an academic standpoint, and all the expectations in around the department are still there. It's just a little different for some sports, some student athletes.
The money piece of this, the economics obviously are mind-blowing, certainly big dollars, television contracts, other things that go into it. There's been a lot of publicity recently about, and I'll call it a private equity deal, a $2 billion deal, allegedly out on the table for the Big Ten Conference. Scott, to the extent that you can simplify it and tell us what that potential deal is and what the talk was. I think some schools maybe don't think it's such a great idea. Maybe some do. Walk us through that if you could, and what that deal is all about.
Yeah, the easiest way I can say it is it really that the 18 schools in the Big Ten are really together trying to see how is the best way for us to maximize our value as a conference, as 18 brands working together for a lot of common goals. And so in doing so, if you use the analogy or look at even like pro sports, you look at the NFL and you look at NFL properties or ways where the brands come together to maybe maximize that from a marketability standpoint. That's what really, the Big Ten, which has been reported at times very accurately, at times inaccurately, but to look at maybe if there's ways for us to come together, to agree maybe for an extension for how long we're going to be together, so we can figure out a way to maximize that opportunity for our entire league, which also then what that does is enables us to have the most broad-based programming conference in the country in terms of what we do for women's sports, what we do for Olympic sports. And we want to continue to be that broad-based programming conference.
Yeah. So do you see private investment in the future?
Yeah, I think there's opportunities as long as you look at that you don't lose any control. Because I think one of the things that is super important is the foundation of and we've talked about this a lot of not just what IU is all about and IU athletics, but what the conference is all about. So I think there's ways to modernize that. And there have been other aspects of that, even within IU athletics now, where we have ability to outsource different things or partner with the private sector, that as long as we maintain control, that we don't lose sight of the balance of college athletics and we do all the great things that everybody expects and wants and loves college athletics for, I think that we have to modernize it and think of ways that we can do that, particularly on the revenue side.
I'll ask you your personal opinion is where you see things going. It certainly seems that today there's the big two, there's the Big Ten and the SEC. Where do you see the future of conferences going? And as part of that, the future of conferences like the MAC and some other conferences that aren't I'll call it the upper echelon, they're great conferences, but where do you see that all playing out?
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how, because in a way you're talking about governance, you're talking about revenue, Division I and at the NCAA level, which the NCAA I think unfairly at times gets criticized, because the NCAA is really just it's all of our schools coming together to govern themselves. And I think one of the challenges, Gary, that probably we'll see how it evolves is that Division I has become so large to govern that many schools that then in that number, you have larger schools and much smaller schools that have different priorities, different problems. I think the thing that will be interesting to see how it evolves is how the governance structure unfolds. And you're reading a lot about that now as changes are already happening. And so I think you'll see more like schools maybe govern themselves together in different ways. And I'm not sure how that will happen, but I think in order to move things along and to continue to modernize, and just like revenue share that we're doing now and sort of some of the deregulation, it's important to have schools working on rules together that are very, very similar than such disparate schools in terms of resources. Sometimes that makes it super challenging.
Lots has certainly changed in the landscape with NIL, the transfer portal, obviously, which a lot of people have issues with the transfer portal as well. Do you see the likelihood of additional changes or modifications when it comes to the transfer portal and things like that? Are we finishing? A lot of people talk about the need for guardrails and God forbid, some people would say Congress getting involved. Where do you see that playing out?
Yeah, I think there'll continue to be lots of change. I really do. And I think ultimately what we really need to stabilize everything is some federal legislation that can help all the universities together put guardrails around things. Because the challenge right now is because of antitrust issues and, not to get too deep in the weeds and all that, but when you set rules, and it's hard because they become challenged in the court system, that it's hard to really put the sort of some guardrails around it. So I do think that it has to continue to evolve. I think the House settlement provides a real framework to really build the future of college athletics, and now all the details around it are going to have to evolve. So I wouldn't say that it's going to slow down in terms of the changes in the near future, but hopefully there is light at the end of the tunnel that we can get our arms around this and get some real stability.
What's the biggest challenge for you, Scott, and for IU in terms of managing NIL? It obviously so different now. Schools are getting general managers and player personnel. It's very much reflective of the professional game. What's the biggest challenge from a collegiate program like IU's?
Yeah, I think the challenge today is different than the challenge was a year ago or 2 years ago. I think today, just coming off being in Chicago for Big Ten meetings, is that, you've got revenue share, which is internal in the department, which is kind of easy to understand. But then there's now kind of true NIL, which is outside the department. And the guardrails around that are evolving. And so I think the challenge is we want to maximize that opportunity for our student athletes in both ways, in every way we can. But how that works outside the department, how the clearinghouse will work, how it's enforced in terms of rules around that are all being developed. It feels like we're changing the tires on the car while we're going down the highway, the old analogy. And so to make certain that, we're committed. We want to play by the rules like we always have. That's in our DNA. But to be able to be competitive within the rules that are being developed is a challenge that we continue to work on every day. But we're confident whatever it ends up, we're going to be fine. But that would be, if you wanted me to give me the truth serum, what's the biggest challenge? It's kind of navigating that world right now.
Scott, how do Olympic sports and women's sports come out in all of this? There have been a lot of talk that they're going to get kind of the short end of the stick when it comes to financial resources and other kinds of things. How do you see that playing out?
I see, I'm speaking more for the Big Ten perspective, but I see women's sports and Olympic sports really thriving. And we just talked at length in the meetings we had in Chicago, how many new scholarships are being added across the board, including here, for women's sports and Olympic sports. And so, the Big Ten and we're championing this just along with everybody else. We have no interest in de-emphasizing or downsizing, or we want to make certain that we can continue to have the broad-based programming. But at the same time, that takes revenue, it takes resources. And so anytime you start shifting resources, you have to really make certain you can work hard to maintain that balance. So, I'm confident that we can continue to thrive across the board in the new world, but it is going to take some real work to make certain we can maintain the balance.
Final question for you. I know you would say you're bullish on both IU and intercollegiate athletics overall. But Scott, if we're doing this podcast in another 5 years, what do you think some of the headlines are going to be, maybe for IU sports, but also the collegiate game and where things are in 5 years?
Yeah, I would hope that in 5 years that there really is more stability, that this massive transformative change that we've been going through is really well understood, because I do think there's a lot of misconception right now, and understandably so. Even when I go home and tell my wife at the end of the day something new's happened and she's in it with me every day, she doesn't always understand NIL and rev share and transfer portal and conference realignment. So I hope that there's stability, and I'm confident there will be, but at the same time, that stability still brings that, and I don't mean to be repetitive, but it is so important, Gary, that we don't lose sight. We're an institution of higher education that does great things for young people, and we can't get so caught up in the transactional part of this that we ever lose sight of that. And that's what I hope for 5 years from now, not to get Pollyannish on you, but that, we've got we're producing Olympians like we have. We had more Olympians in the last Olympics than we had in our previous, I'm talking about IU, in the last 50 years. And wow. I know how much our alumni base loves that. And so, I want to continue to win and compete and have great things happening, but also where our fans, the state of Indiana, our community, our alumni feel super proud that we do it the right way and we're developing young people. And that's what it's really all about.
Scott Dolson is the director of intercollegiate athletics at Indiana University. Scott, really appreciate you taking the time to join us on the podcast this week. You have made a lot of big decisions that are coming to play out in a very positive way, at least to this point. We hope that continues for you. Thanks for joining us.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, Gary, and it's a day at a time. We'll just keep trying to, we got to get through this Saturday, and we'll just keep rolling and keep working hard. Thanks for having me on. Go IU.
All right. And thank you for joining us on this episode of the Business and Beyond podcast, presented by PNC, where a weekly conversation with achievers in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond. And you can download all of our episodes and get Indiana business news 24/7. All you have to do is go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com. I'm Gerry Dick. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Off the Record with Indiana's 250 most influential business and community leaders is a podcast that peels back the curtain on Indiana's most respected leaders, one episode at a time. Go beyond the headlines and hear the stories of grit and innovation that shape these leaders. Do you want to know who's driving our state forward? This is a must listen. Subscribe and listen wherever you get your podcasts or at ibjpodcast.com.
Want to give your team a real edge? The IBJ Group Plan delivers unlimited access to every story, every report, every video from IBJ and Inside Indiana Business for your whole team. Cover some or all of your employees with one simple payment. The more you add, the more you save. It's smart, it's flexible, and it saves you up to 30% off the standard rate. Already have IBJ subscribers in your office? Group up and save big. Learn more and get started now at ibj.com/group-plan.